The mist clung to the shoulders of the Gyeonggi Mountains like a worn silver shawl, refusing to lift even as the sun climbed higher. Below, in the valley, they called the Serpent's Embrace, lay the mirror of silent heaven. The villagers of the nearby settlement, Xianshui, avoided the lake. They said it was a place of forgotten gods and hungry spirits, that its waters drank the sunlight and gave back only cold silence. They said men who lingered too long on its shores would forget their own names. Li Wei paid the old tales no mind. To him, the lake was simply a place where the fish were plentiful and the silence was a balm. A former scholar from a distant, bustling prefecture, he had traded his inkstone for a fishing net years ago, seeking a life unburdened by the intrigues of court and the weight of expectation. His small skiff, little more than a hollowed-out log, was his sanctuary. On this particular morning, the silence felt different. It was not peaceful, but watchful. The air was so still that the plop of his net hitting the water seemed an obscene disturbance. He hauled it in, the fibers rough against his calloused hands, expecting the familiar silver flash of trout. Instead, the net held only mud, weeds, and a single, startling object. It was a jade pendant, carved in the shape of a coiled dragon, its body forming a perfect circle. The stone was of a quality he had never seen, a deep, translucent green that seemed to hold a captured moonlight within. It was cool to the touch, and as his fingers closed around it, a faint, melodic hum vibrated up his arm, a sensation more felt than heard. It was pristine, without a scratch or a stain of algae, as if it had been dropped into the water mere moments ago, not lain forgotten in the silt for decades. Puzzled, he tucked it into his tunic and cast his net again. This time it snagged on something heavy. Grunting with effort, he pulled, the skiff rocking dangerously. What emerged from the depths was not a log or a rock, but a man. He was dressed in robes of a style Li Wei had only seen in ancient temple murals. The fabric, once rich silk embroidered with cranes and clouds, was waterlogged and faded, yet it showed no sign of rot. The man's face was serene, his skin pale as fine porcelain, and his long, dark hair fanned around him like a halo. He was not breathing, yet he did not look dead. He looked suspended, enchanted. Trembling, Li Wei managed to haul the impossibly light form into his skiff. The man was as cold as the jade in his pocket. As he laid him down, his hand brushed against the man's chest. The same faint, melodic hum he had felt from the pendant resonated from the man's still form. A memory, sharp and sudden, pierced Li Wei's calm. An old scroll he had read in his youth, a fanciful text dismissed as myth. It spoke of the Lake of 1,000 Slumbers, a place where those touched by a powerful magic could be placed in a state of suspended animation, hidden from the world, until the conditions were right for their awakening. The text mentioned a key, a talisman of jade that served as both lock and catalyst. His heart hammered against his ribs. He looked from the jade in his hand to the slumbering noble in his boat. This was no folktale to frighten children. This was real. Driven by a scholar's rekindled curiosity and a man's burgeoning fear, he poled the skiff back to his small hut on the shore. He concealed the slumbering man within, wrapping him in dry blankets, though he felt no cold. The man's presence filled the single room, a silent, monumental secret. For days Li Wei was torn. He tended to his silent guest, studied the jade pendant, and scoured his memory and his small collection of books for more clues. The humming from both man and stone was a constant low-level thrum in his life, a reminder of the impossible reality he now inhabited. On the 5th day, the decision was made for him. A storm, fierce and sudden, descended upon the Serpent's Embrace. Lightning tore the sky, and the wind howled like a legion of vengeful ghosts. From his window, Li Wei watched the mirror of silent heaven transform. The usually placid water churned into a fury of black waves. and in the chaotic flashes of lightning he saw them. Dozens of them, pale, still forms, men and women in ancient garb, lifted from the depths by the storm's violence. They floated just beneath the surface, their robes swirling around them like the petals of some monstrous underwater flower. For a few terrifying seconds, the lake was not a mirror, but a window revealing its terrible, enchanted secret. The forgotten lake was not a grave, it was a vault. The storm vanished, leaving Li Wei breathless. He was not a guardian of one, but a custodian of a hidden history slumbering in the abyss. The Jade dragon in his hand was not a key, but a responsibility. The lake's magic was failing, the travelers were stirring, and his secret was unraveling. Days bled into weeks after the storm's revelation. Li Wei's simple life was irrevocably fractured. Every ripple on the lake's surface seemed a sign, every night sound a potential herald of discovery. The slumbering noble in his hut, whom he had come to think of as Lord Bai, remained a statue of perfect stillness, a silent anchor to a world Li Wei could not comprehend. The jade pendant now hung on a leather cord around his neck, hidden beneath his tunic, its constant soft hum a reminder of his burden. He knew his own knowledge was insufficient. The texts he possessed were fragments of folklore, not grimoires. He needed a scholar, but not one from the imperial courts who would seize the discovery as a curiosity or a threat. He needed someone who understood the old ways, the true magic that had long since receded from the world. There was only one person the wary villagers of Xianshui whispered about in connection with such things: Lin Xia, the scholar of broken seals. She lived a half-day's journey up the mountain, in a hermitage clinging to the cliffside, a place as shrouded in rumor as the lake itself. They said she had been a brilliant adept at the cloud-scraping spire until a forbidden experiment shattered her standing and her spirit. Now she studied only what she wished and tolerated few visitors. Bearing a basket of fresh fish and his last jug of rice wine as tribute, Li Wei made the arduous climb. Lin Xia's hermitage was a small, orderly structure, its shelves groaning with bamboo scrolls and strange artifacts. She herself was a woman of sharp angles and sharper eyes, her hair streaked with premature grey, her gaze missing nothing. She accepted his gifts with a silent nod, listening as Li Wei, choosing his words with extreme care, spoke of finding a strange artifact by the lake and experiencing phenomena. He did not mention the slumbering man in his hut. When he finished, Lin Xia's expression was unreadable. "The mirror of silent heaven," she said, her voice like the rustle of dry leaves. "A foolish name for a dangerous place. What you have found is likely a lure, Fisherman. A spirit baiting a trap." "It is no trap," Li Wei insisted, his hand instinctively going to the pendant beneath his tunic. Her eyes locked onto the movement. "Show me." Reluctantly, he drew out the jade dragon. The moment it cleared his tunic, its soft hum escalated into a clear, resonant chime. A faint green light emanated from its core, casting shifting shadows on the walls. Lin Xia recoiled, her scholarly detachment shattering. The dragon's echo. "By the 5 celestial masters, where did you truly find this?" She surged forward, not to take it, but to study its glow, her face a mask of awe and terror. "This is no mere trinket. This is a soul anchor, a key tied to a life suspended. It should have crumbled to dust millennia ago. Its presence means the seal is breaking." "What seal?" Li Wei demanded, his heart pounding. "The warding of the unmoving earth," she exclaimed, rushing to a pile of scrolls. She unrolled one, revealing a complex geomantic chart. "The lake is not a natural basin. It is a purpose-built prison, a celestial mechanism designed to hold those caught in a grand, stalled moment in time. A war, a catastrophe, history itself, frozen in that water." She pointed a trembling finger at the pendant. "And that is one of the keys. If it is active, it means the magic is failing, the stasis is unraveling. The truth, voiced by a scholar of her caliber, was far more terrifying than his own suspicions. What happens if it fails? They wake, she said bluntly. All of them. And we have no idea if they are saviors, warlords, or demons. Their awakening could be a rebirth or an apocalypse. She looked from the glowing Jade to his horrified face. You have more than this pendant, Fisherman. You have one of them, don't you? Li Wei could only nod. Then we have no time, Lin Xia said, grabbing a satchel and stuffing scrolls and vials into it. Take me to him now, before the lake decides to wake the rest. The journey back to Li Wei's hut was a silent, frantic rush through the gathering dusk. The forest seemed to press in on them, every shadow holding a new threat. Upon entering the humble dwelling, Lin Xia froze on the threshold, her sharp eyes wide. She approached the slumbering form of Lord Bai, not with fear, but with the reverence of a historian touching a lost scripture. The craftsmanship of the robes, the cut of the jade belt, she whispered, her fingers hovering just above the fabric. This is from the late Phoenix Empire, a dynasty that fell over 1,000 years ago. He has been asleep in the deep, Fisherman, for longer than our village has existed. She produced a small, polished bronze mirror from her satchel and held it before Lord Bai's nose and lips. No fog appeared. Then she placed it over his heart. After a long moment, a faint, silvery sheen clouded the metal. He lives, she breathed, but not by breath or blood. His soul is anchored, tethered to this world by the very magic that fills the lake. Her attention then turned to the jade pendant around Li Wei's neck. The texts speak of a resonance. The soul anchor must be returned to its bearer to begin the awakening. But it is a fragile process, like tuning a priceless zither. The magic has been decaying for centuries. A misstep could sever the tether entirely, rendering him truly dead, or worse, shatter his mind. Li Wei's hand tightened around the dragon carving. What must I do? Place it on his chest. Over his heart, Lin Xia instructed, positioning herself ready with a scroll unfurled, its surface covered in stabilizing sigils. The rest is between him and the magic. Be ready for anything. Taking a steadying breath, Li Wei knelt. The hum of the jade intensified as he brought it near, vibrating through his bones. As the cool stone touched the silken robe over Lord Bai's heart, the world held its breath. For a moment, nothing. Then a light erupted from the pendant. Not a wild flare, but a deep, pulsing emerald radiance that enveloped the nobleman's form. The air crackled with the scent of ozone and ancient dust. Lord Bai's back arched slightly, a soft, shuddering gasp tearing from his lips, the first breath in a millennium. His eyelids fluttered open. His eyes were dark, deep pools of confusion and an intelligence that had not been extinguished, only dormant. They scanned the thatched roof, the humble walls before settling on Li Wei's face. Then Lin Xia's. He tried to speak, but only a dry, rasping whisper emerged. Li Wei hurried to bring him a ladle of water, supporting his head as he drank. The man's body was light, almost hollow. Where? He croaked, his voice a relic itself. The battle. The general. You are safe, Lord Bai, Lin Xia said, her voice gentle yet firm. The battle you remember was long ago. You have been preserved in the mirror of silent heaven. The name seemed to trigger a cascade of memory in his eyes. Pain, loss, and a fierce, grim determination. The lake of slumbers, he corrected weakly. The retreat, the last resort. His gaze sharpened, focusing on the jade on his chest. The soul anchor held. Then, the warding fails? It is weakening, Li Wei confirmed. A storm revealed others below the surface. A profound dread washed over Lord Bai's refined features. No, you do not understand. We were not all victims of the same calamity. We are the opposing sides. He struggled to sit up. his strength returning in fits and starts. "My name is Bai Yun, last Chancellor of the Phoenix Empire. We sought to seal away a great evil, a renegade general who sold his soul to a shadow for power. His name is Zhu, the Vermilion General. He and his most loyal followers were entombed with us, a desperate measure to stop his conquest." The truth struck Li Wei and Lin Xia like a physical blow. The lake was not a sanctuary, it was a battlefield under a pause. "If I am awake," Bai Yun said, his voice gaining a desperate edge, "then his anchor may also be active. If he wakes before the ward fully fails, he will be weakened, trapped. We could still contain him."
But if the lake releases them all at once, he didn't need to finish.
The horror was plain in his eyes. As if summoned by his name, a deep, thrumming groan echoed from outside, emanating from the very heart of the lake. They rushed to the door. Out on the dark water, a sickly, crimson light pulsed far below the surface, like a monstrous waking eye. The water around it began to swirl, slowly at first, then with gathering speed. The Vermilion General was not just waking. He was stirring the lake itself. A monstrous vortex churned where the crimson light had pulsed, dragging dark water into a deepening maw. From its center, a figure began to rise, clad in armor of lacquered scarlet and black iron. General Zhu did not simply awake, he erupted. His form was wreathed in tendrils of shadow, and his eyes burned with the same malevolent red that had called him forth. The air grew heavy and cold, the very vitality of the land seeming to shrivel at his presence.
"The seal is broken!" Bai Yun gasped, leaning heavily on the doorframe.
His body, still weak from its long slumber, trembled not with fear, but with futile resolve. He draws power directly from the lake's decaying magic.
"I'm not strong enough to face it."
"The ward isn't fully broken yet," Lin Xia countered, her voice sharp with focus. She pointed to the shoreline, where ancient standing stones formed a near-invisible circle. "Geomantic lattice is fractured, not destroyed. Can't reseal him, but we might be able to collapse the mechanism."
"What does that mean?"
Li Wei asked, his hand clenched around the now dull jade pendant. "It means sinking the prison with the warden still inside," Bai Yun said, understanding dawning. "Trapping him at the abyssal floor, where the pressure and the remnants of the ward may hold him indefinitely. But it requires a catalyst at the vortex's heart, a sacrifice of immense power." Their eyes fell, as one, upon the dragon's echo pendant. On the lake, Zhu Shi's voice boomed, a sound of cracking stone and triumph.
"Think then your feeble empire is dust. I will finish what was started!"
He took a step upon the water, his shadowy aura solidifying into a path of black ice. There was no more time for debate. The plan was madness, a desperate gambit. Li Wei, the simple fisherman who wanted only peace, looked at the ancient chancellor and the reclusive scholar. He had found this burden and he would see it through. "I will take it," he said, his voice steady. "You will die," Lin Xia stated, no judgment in her tone, only fact. "I know the waters," Li Wei replied. Even like this, he met Bai Yun's gaze.
"Tell me what to do."
With a look of profound respect, Bai Yun instructed him. "The vortex is the key. Throw the soul anchor into its center. The conflicting energies will shatter the pendant's core, causing a chain reaction. It will be like breaking the main beam of a house. Everything will come down." Li Wei did not hesitate. He sprinted to his skiff, shoved it into the choppy water, and began to pull with all his strength towards the maelstrom. The wind tore at him and the water clawed at his boat. Zhu saw him coming and laughed, a corrosive sound, raising a hand to summon a spear of solidified shadow. But Bai Yun, drawing on a final reserve of his ancient power, stepped forward. He did not attack. Instead, he wove a shield of shimmering emerald light around Li Wei's skiff. The shadow spear shattered against it. "Hurry, fisherman!" Bai Yun cried, his form already beginning to flicker, the effort consuming the last of his strength.
Li Wei drove his pole deep, propelling the skiff into the raging edge of the vortex.
The world narrowed to the howling wind and the sucking pull of the water. At the precipice, he saw the dark, armored form of the general below, his burning eyes fixed on him. With a final defiant shout, Li Wei hurled the jade pendant into the heart of the storm. For a moment, it hovered, a speck of green against the black and red. Then it flashed, a light of pure, silent white that consumed all sound and color. The explosion was not of fire, but of force. A colossal pulse of energy radiated outwards, flattening the water. The vortex collapsed in on itself with a deafening roar. The crimson light around Zhu Xi winked out, and a scream of pure, undiluted fury was cut short as the lake, like a giant's hand, slammed closed over him. The standing stones on the shore cracked, their power spent. The resulting wave lifted Li Wei's skiff and hurled him back towards the shore, where he landed, bruised and gasping in the mud. As the water settled, an unnatural stillness returned to the mirror of silent heaven. The surface was once again a perfect, dark mirror. But it was heavier now, holding its terrible secret deeper and more finally than before. Bai Yun was gone, his form having dissipated into motes of light, his duty finally complete. Weeks later, the mist still clung to the Chongji Mountains. Li Wei stood on the shore, Lin Xia beside him. No villager would ever know what had transpired. The forgotten lake had hidden its travelers once more, this time forever. "He's not truly gone," Lin Xia said softly. "His spirit is part of the ward now, the final lock on the prison." Li Wei nodded, feeling the weight of the silence. He had sought a simple life, but had found a purpose far greater. He was no longer just a fisherman. He was the guardian of the silence, the watcher of the deep. And he knew